Grains and beans absolutely love the thermal cooker, right? They love it. Pastas and vegetables, not so much. They do not like being in heat for a long period of time. I have 4 cups of water and 2.5 cups of rice, a little bit of salt. I'm going to put it on my stove, bring it to a boil, and stir quite a bit because I want to keep that grain rotating around. Because what happens is sometimes after you take it off of here, it quits, the movement quits because it's not boiling anymore, right? Because there's no flame under it when it goes in the cooker. So I'll stir it quite a bit until it comes to a boil, and then I let it boil for 3 minutes, and it goes in the thermal cooker over the other food in the big pot. And 99% of the time it works out perfect. If for some reason it didn't quite work that time, stir it a little bit, stick it back in the thermal cooker for 5 or 10 minutes, and that extra water that was on the bottom and lack of on the top will distribute that. It will soak, that grain will soak it right up. When I was teaching, I started with grains, so I was determined to really have a lot of information on grains in the book. But nobody wanted a book this big. I didn't have time to write a book this big. So I decided to quit stressing over grains, and I just have some simple guidelines to go by. Just remember, grains absorb water. It's not a big deal. Also, if you're doing a big grain like berries, like wheat berries, you strain the water anyway, so it doesn't really matter how much water's in there. Just bring them to a boil, put them in the cooker. You're saving on fuel, and when you're ready to take them out, take them out. There's instructions on there how long. Okay, beans. I love this part. Okay, beans part. Here's my dry beans. Because I discovered something. I've known it for a long time, but I used to be really pretty ornery about, like, I was sort of last minute at making my food, so I would, like, I don't need to soak grains because I'm in a hurry and I know I can get them to get soft without soaking them. So I just toss them in and then, wait till they boil them long enough so they're cooked. Okay, so why do I want to soak my grains? Who knows the answer to that? Anybody know? It's better for you. It's better for you. Do we know why it's better for us? It's called phytic acid. Okay? In the shell of any seed, there's something in there called phytic acid. And what it does, so whether it's a grain, a bean, or a nut, what the job is for the phytic acid is its job is to be put in the ground, and once the seed's in the ground, it pulls nutrients unto itself to help grow that plant. So we go ahead and we don't soak, we don't sprout, and we don't ferment. All 3 of those things will break down that phytic acid. But we don't do that, and so we eat that stuff, and then it's hard on our digestive system. We wonder why we have so many digestive issues. In times gone by, they just did that normally as part of how they cook. I mean, you think of natural yeast, right, and making breads with that natural yeast. Just that process breaks down the phytic acid. So now I like soaking my almonds, right? Because there's phytic acid in almonds too. So and they're delicious when they're soaked. So I like to soak the ingredients. So now I soak my beans. So I know I'm breaking. Oh, by the way, once it's soaked and it breaks into this other, whatever it's called, then it helps distribute nutrition instead of robbing it. Yes?
How long do you soak them?
At least 6 hours. I usually do overnight. It's just easy that way to do it overnight. So, this is my process. I will take some beans, put it in a bowl, put some water in it. Do I use salt or do I need to use no salt? No salt? Anybody else? Okay, Cook's Illustrated. They tested it, and they have a tablespoon of salt in soaking and a teaspoon of salt when cooking, and they work out beautiful. That's for what it's worth. Because you know what? I've always heard it was no salt too, right? So when I saw that, I started testing it. And look at these. These are beautiful beans. These have been soaked and dehydrated. And this is how to do this is in the book too. Because what happens is, let's say I'm going to make these beans and I'm going to have to, I think ahead because I know I'm going to make this meal of chili, white chili, the night before. So I soak the beans. They're in here. The next day I'm going to strain them. Very important to strain those beans after you soak them. Then I'm going to put them on the stove, add the water I need for the beans, put the beans in there. These beans, unless they're really old, should be able to be done in 10 to 15 minute boil. Pretty easy. I usually do a 10-minute boil on my beans, especially after they're soaked. So think about that. I'm only boiling beans for 10 minutes. How long do you usually boil beans? All day. Yeah, I'm only boiling for 10 minutes. If they're old beans, you're gonna have to play with that a little bit. If you can't ever, you know, half hour hard boil and then keep them in there for 8 hours.
If they're old beans, if you put baking soda in it, it's soften it up.
I've also heard distilled water, to soak them in distilled water. And if you don't get that far, just grind them for flour. Right? Use them as a thickening. After you grind them, it's also a great thickening agent. So there's tons of things we can do if we just think through some of those. So in this process, I put these, I've already soaked them, I've strained the soaked ones, put new water in here, put my beans, well, my beans are in there, put new water in, I poured the soaked beans in, put water in, add some salt, I don't know they need a whole teaspoon, because there will be some in here. I'll add a little bit of salt, and then bring it to a boil. Boil for 10 minutes, okay? Then I'm going to add the rest of the seasoning packet for the white chili. Then I'm going to boil it for another minute, put it in the thermal unit, and then 5 to 6 hours later, it's ready. Okay, because I got to cook those beans. Okay, wonder if I used the dehydrated ones that I had already pre-soaked overnight, cooked them for 5 to 6 hours or however long until I get back to them. Then I strain them, and then I dehydrate them. Now I have a dehydrated item. Okay, bring my water to a boil. All the prep work's already done. Put these in here and they're ready within an hour or so. Because they're dehydrated, I've done the work ahead. Which works great, yes.
Can I ask about the dehydrated, or is that off the subject?
Oh, we're talking dehydrated, sure.
How did you soak them and then put them in the dehydrator?
I soaked them, I strained them, then I put them in the cooker. So I put them in this one, brought them to a boil for 10 minutes, put them in the cooker for 5 to 6 or 7 or 8 hours. Then I strain them again, put them on the dehydrator, and they dehydrate. You can tell when they're done.
I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah. Well, you can buy them that way. I thought, why can't I do it myself? Yeah. So, all that information's in the book.
Cool.
Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How long it takes in the cooker? About 6 hours.
For the beans. At least that long. Usually I just put them on for the day and don't worry about them. Or the overnight or whatever. Pasta. In the book I have 8 ideas for pasta. Because pasta does not like the thermal cooker. If you're eating within 2 hours, just go ahead and put it in. If you're eating, another idea that I like that goes along with this one, and by the way, I love the trivets. You guys have trivets? You do? Okay, thank you. Do you have trivets? These? No, Saratoga Jack one?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
They're on the
they
table.
have them. Okay, good, because these I think are pretty important. So, if you have a trivet, and I have this little pasta mill I was going to make, okay? I'm trying to get your mind thinking of what all the possibilities, okay? So, I'm going to put the pasta sauce in the bottom and bring it to a boil. I'm going to get the pasta, and I am going to cook it in a totally different pot. The beans are in this one, the sauce is in this one, and let's say that somewhere else I'm cooking the pasta. I'm going to strain the pasta, put it in a Ziploc bag. I'm going to only cook it al dente, just a couple minutes under boiling. Put it in a Ziploc bag. If you have a problem with heat and cooking food in a Ziploc bag, choose another method. I just want you thinking about ways you can make things cook. So I'm going to take this trivet and put it right inside the sauce. Okay? And then it's up. So now when I go ahead and set that pasta bag in there, it's going to be not down in the stuff, right? It's going to be sitting sort of on top. We'll probably get some sauce on it, but it's not a big deal. This will have beans in it. So once they're all nice and hot, this whole thing just goes in the thermal unit and you're good to go. Then you got your whole meal in there. Also stay tuned for these. Jack is ordering more of these. For vegetables, I made a steamer. Okay, this one I just drilled holes in. And it works really great. So I would put my food in this one and get it boiling. Put it on there, put it in the thermal cooker. When about a half hour before I'm ready to eat, I'm going to pull it back out, bring it back to a boil. Put my vegetables in here, right, back on the stove. Bring it back to a boil. Boil it for at least like about 2 minutes or so. And then put it back in the thermal unit for a little bit longer than what that vegetable would need. Because the heat's not sustaining, right? So you'd want to leave it a little bit longer because it's reducing in temperature. But then your vegetables aren't mushy and gross. They work out pretty nice. And they will cook nicely. Also, that's great for fish. You could steam fish in here too. Fish is not so great in the thermal. Okay? There's a couple things as fish stew would work nice, but most of the time fish is not the happiest. So, Anyway, so that's something to do with vegetables to help. Usually putting vegetables in stew or something liquid works pretty
You need that while you're opening it back up?
You'd have to bring it back to a boil to do the vegetable, for sure. And the fish, if you want to do the fish that way. So you need to make sure you're able to do that, or pick another method or another method. Because sometimes you take it, and the point is you don't want to have to heat it back up, right? So that's times when you're maybe around the house, you're camping and you know you can heat it back up quick. It wouldn't be for every time. But these are really nice. Pot roast, like a pot roast, people say, well, what about vegetables? What I noticed, pot roast in there 8 hours, I like my pot roast in 8 hours. The sweet potatoes get a little soft, the white ones are relatively soft, but the carrots are fine.